As Joanna said, Ricky's a little under the weather today, so we're taking over. Just great. Let's start with a quiz this morning. See if you remember. Some of you better remember because I said this about a million times. Can anybody tell me what in Ed's definition, what's the difference between a church and a chapel? Anybody remember that? Oh, I remember him talking about that. Anybody remember other than my wife? What's the difference?
Church is people, and Jason said chapel's a place.
Close, but Yeah, Jason has an excuse. He wasn't here when I was a senior pastor. Carol Ann, on the other hand, was here for about 15 years. So she's got no excuse. Okay, this is just my definition, but my definition, a chapel is a group of people who are focused upon taking care of the people who are already here. A church is a group of people who are focused on taking care of the people who aren't here yet. And you can be, it's not a matter of size. A church can be 20 people focused on reaching to the ends of the earth. A chapel can be 20,000 people focused on taking care of the people who are already followers of Christ. This is a church. Part of the DNA of KCC, as, by the way, what we were just singing, Plant the Good News of Jesus Christ, that is the mission statement of Kingsburg Community Church for the last 31 years. That has been our mission statement 31 years ago. Craig Anderson, who's gone to be with the Lord, wrote that song, that music, so everybody would memorize our mission statement. Plant the good news of Jesus Christ, grow mature disciples, harvest the fruit of the Spirit for the needs of the world.
Whole world.
We're looking out at the world, and that's what it means to be KCC. So if you're not interested in missions, or if you come from a church background, you've come to KCC where missions was a program. You know, we have a music program, that's fine, but some people have voices to be ushers. That's fine. So not everybody has to be a part of the missions program or the music program. The children's program, your kids are grown, your grandkids are growing. They're not here, so you don't have to be a part of the children's program. All that's great. If you're going to be a part of KCC, your heart has got to beat a little bit faster when we start talking about missions and going to the ends of the earth. That's what it means to be here. It's part of our DNA. And so our job in the next week as missions committee is to help you catch that DNA. Yeah. You know, we want to spread the virus of the ends of the earth. And because of that, we've invited the Reverend Dr. Alvern Vom Steeg, you can call him Al, to come and to share with us a little bit about missions this morning. Al is currently the Senior International Director Emeritus, which basically means old guy. That's why I'm the pastor emeritus of KCC, of International Leadership Institute. It's a group of people who multiply the gospel by bringing principles of Christian leadership and multiplication to people around the world. Previous to that, he was the executive director of the Mission Society for a number of years, a missions agency sending out missionaries, again, globally. And some of our missionaries are still serving under the Mission Society. Before that, he was the pastor of a local church in Fresno, St. Luke's, Fresno, for 14 years, 6 of which he was blessed by God to have the best associate pastor in the history of the world. You know, when I came to Fresno, Al was just not very inspiring. He just didn't have any passion, kind of would get up, speak in a monotone, and it took me 6 years, but we fixed that. Absolutely not true. All right, before that, he graduated from Asbury Seminary, where he later served as a board member of the seminary there. He's a proud graduate of the UC Davis Aggies. So there's 2 of you here This is your moment. 3. Oh, that's right. Dave's an Aggie, too. Oh, boy. That's 3 too many. He grew up in South San Francisco, where, unfortunately, he was a Niner fan and a Giant fan. I haven't been able to fix that. His wife Jane is with us. They served for 7 years as missionaries to Brazil. So if he lapses into another language, that is not the gift of tongues, it's Portuguese. And he just can't help it sometimes. They have 3 children, Andy, Tim, and Alicia, 10 grandchildren, and just recently greeted their first great-grandchild. It's always great to have Vom Steeg with us here. My mentor, Al, come on up here, and welcome back to Fresno.
Now, do you want me to tell you something about him? Yeah. Yeah. There's quite a bit. It's he went. Where did he go to seminary? Princeton? Where'd you go? Didn't go to Asbury? Well, then you're missing something. Hey, it's real good to be with you all today. Privilege for Jane and myself. We've had a lot of great years in ministry, over 60 years. We met at seminary. And now with our kids grown and grandchildren coming along, it's a joy of being a part of our life. I finally stepped aside, it's been 5 years now. I guess when I got 80, I thought it was time. There's only so many airlines you can fit into. Those 13-hour trips got a little tiring. But to be a part of your church, what a privilege. You're one of the churches that kept me fresh for all the years when I went to visit churches. One year I preached 100 sermons. I was in 8 states and 8 nations and 12 states in 1 year. Our goal at Mission Society at that time was to try and, number one, to make missions real. Church is just a club. If missions, as Pastor Ed said, if it's not a vital part of the church, you're just a social club. Show up Sunday morning, drink some coffee, talk with each other, go on home, play whatever you want to play. And we found we're Methodists, and so across Methodist churches, great history of Methodism, great history of missions. But we found across the Methodist church just was dying, it was dead, it was in trouble, it didn't speak missions. So my job was to say, how can we bring it to life? So traveled an awful lot, a lot of different places. And I could tell a church when I walked into whether they had a program. This is, okay, it's March. Missions. Now it's time for Bible school. Now it's time for vacation. Now it's time. Okay, it's just a program. And I just didn't read that in the Bible. I didn't learn that at Asbury Seminary. We learned from a seminary professor, J.T. Seaman's, missionary, 2nd, 3rd generation in India. He said, if you don't have a missions program, you're just a club. You're just a club. So Jane and I married. We're going to talk about that a little later, but we married and came to California where my family is. We went to a little church, a little A-frame church about that big, 35 people fit in it. People got there early because if they didn't get there early, then they had to sit next to the wall because it was like this. So people always came early. And our Sunday school, we just tied wires across the top, put up shields, put up pieces of cloth. We taught Sunday school and people learned. And so during that period of time, we said, but we're only 35 people. Yeah, but if you want to be a real church, you got to have a mission program with faith giving and all the whole bit. So we met a missionary that Jane knew of from the Congo, pilot. And we met him actually went looking for him back in Indiana where Jane's from. And we said, would you consider coming to California? We only have 35 people in our church, but we need a mission program. I said, it's going to cost $180. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. He flew out to our first year. Our goal was $3,000. Golly, that's a lot of money when you're a little small. And he came and told us about how his kids just love eating the flies and talked about his pilots and the flights and the things that he endured. And we started it. And we said, and that was the breath of our church. It was a breath of the church. The church isn't about me sitting there for a little while and get bored and all the rest and walk out with no impact. We knew that through mission, sensing the vitality of what God was doing outside of my realm, much more than I could grasp. That does something inside of us about what it means to be a Christian. And out of that experience, and during that time, we said we'd have a missionary in our house, and they said, you ever thought about being a missionary? No, we believe God has called us to make sure that the Church of Jesus Christ had missions. So the thing is, we used to go to Redwood Christian Park. We always had missions in Redwood Christian Park. How can you have camp meeting without missions? And one of the calls coming out of, had a missionary was speaking there from he was tough countries, just tough. But he was talking, not a good speaker, but he just had quality depth to him as he was talking to us. And he made a statement toward the end, and I was out taking care of the youth and came in a little bit late, and he was making a statement called the Princeton Pledge, 1888. Princeton Pledge. And the Princeton Pledge is, God willing, I will be a foreign missionary. Now, if it's up to God, he has to choose it, has to decide it. God willing, I will be a missionary. So I just came into the meeting, and he said it, and so I went to the altar. Just, okay, God, if that's what you want. Never thought about it, because we thought we could sustain, support, be that what God needed to open churches to the reality and the fun and the excitement and the cost of what it means to be a mission church. And I went to the altar, and I said, God, hey, if you want me. That was the only year my wife didn't go to camp with me. Last time she went to camp with me. That's the only time, because I went to the altar and said, honey, we'll never be missionaries. I went just because. And one of those things is we just sailed through great obstacles. In this annual conference, we were there anti-guys like me, because Bible and lost and saved. There was some of the leadership didn't really believe in all of that. But God moved us along, just moved us along at every phase. And a year later, we end up in Brazil. The only thing I was wondering about, did I miss it? Did I miss the flag? Did I miss the Brazilian flag?
Have a missionary in Brazil right now.
Oh God, forgive them for they have. Oh meu Deus, perdoe essa gente, por favor, por favor. Oh Deus. But we had 7 great years, 7 great years. And don't ask God for something if you don't mean for him to give it to you. Don't ask something for God if you really don't mean you want it. And I was at a meeting, at one of those kind of meetings where you're fighting over the right stuff, 2 o'clock in the morning in Brazil. And I had 5 churches. I had my main church, and I had 5 in the country. I got to preach 4 times on a Sunday. I'd drive around 200 kilometers and get to preach. Boy, my 4th sermon was it good. I wanted to give myself an offering. And so we had this late meeting, one of the annual conference kinds of thing, battle over who's going to control the Christian school. Is it going to be Christian? Is it going to be secular? And we won at 2:30 in the morning in the vote. And I'm walking back to my room, and I said, God, I just want to win hundreds and hundreds to Jesus. He spoke to my heart. He said, then you got to go home. You got to go home. Those days, the phones didn't work, and mail was bad, so I always kept a diary, and I wrote it, and I'd bring it home so Jane could see what I was doing. And brought it home, let her read it. She said in Portuguese, verdade? True? I said, no, I was really tired. I was really tired. So we just wait. We kept it silent, but don't ask God for something if you don't mean it. And so it's sorrow, but at the same time, we returned to the States. And God has been blessed us in so many ways. But where we went, it had to be missions. It's not a real church. But in the midst of all this, as you look at it, and their personal spiritual life and the things that are involved in it, one day I was doing my devotion not too long ago, and it kind of stuck with me. And it has, and I hope it never leaves. It just said, well God, what do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Because normally we tell God what we want, don't we? Have you ever asked God what he wants? Or we tell God it's kind of like a machine. I put my card in and get something back out. Because God's required that when I ask and I pray, he's responsible to respond to the prayer where I ask it because I want it. I mean, that's kind of a philosophy he had. I bet some of you remember not having a prayer you prayed and the person still died. Well, wait a minute, God, that's not how it works. I prayed and you were supposed to heal. Wait a minute, God, I prayed to keep my job and I lost it. Hey, God, where are you? And so you carry that. Anytime I preach on prayer, I always say, now, first thing you do is don't think of the first thing that didn't work for you. That God didn't fall down and slobber over you because you didn't get it the way you asked. Most of our prayer lives are impeded by the prayers we don't think God asked, God answered. And so in that moment, so after I'm doing my devotion, I'm saying, well, God, what do you want? What do you want from me? I mean, you're God. You got everything, but what do you want? And the word came out of where they asked that question, and I think we got the text, do you love me? And I think the next one is, he just said this, love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And then love your neighbor as yourself. That's all I want. I just want to love you guys. I want to be there in your worst moments. I want to be there in your best moments. I want to be there in those unknown moments because I love you guys. The whole purpose, in my estimation, I mean, high-depth theology that I have, is that why did God create anything? Why did he create anything? Why did he make Garden Eden so perfect? And you got stuff to eat, and you got stuff to fish, and you got this and everything. And we got time. And I've always envisioned that the idea that God had, that it was going to be kind of like a garden, and we all come out and sit around and drink tea and talk and laugh and giggle. And to me, that's the whole purpose of the creation. To me, is God wanted a place to be with us. That's why he created it, as far as I'm concerned. Why else would you do it? I just want to be with you. The creator of the universe, and he created a place for us to be with him and he with us. That's all he wanted. So I say, God, what are we supposed to do? Love the Lord with all our heart? Yes. But we're also then supposed to love the Lord with all our heart. But that's not all. He said, do another way that I want you to share my love is with those that have never heard about me. That's all I want you to do. I love you, and I love you, what you're doing, and I love how I've made you. And I think what went on in the womb, you ever think about it? What took place that moment when you conceived? That moment that will never return. It's just you and God forming in that mother. And the thing that he did in that womb, just he in that womb, he in that little nothing, he gave me the capacity to breathe, to live, to be a part, to literally come alive. He also, in that same moment, he almost gave me the certainty of something that I could become. I have a future. There's a purpose and a plan for me. And at the same time, he's got that breath. He's given me all these things. That's all he's done. And he also gives me a touch of eternity. It's kind of like, we're here together, but you get born out there, it's going to be a little different, but we're going to be together again. It's called heaven. All that takes place in that little tiny thing. And so, see, the reason why every human being without Jesus has a kind of an echo in their life. Remember a song? We sang that song. I can't remember where we saw it. I can't remember, but there's that tune that keeps going on. I can't identify it, but it keeps coming back to me. And what that is that what he gave us in that is that the ability to have eternity with him. And until we find Jesus, we'll forever have some kind of I've not found it all. I haven't found it yet. I got this thing. I just know there's more. I know there's something else. And I can't remember it until someone introduces you to Jesus. You finally hear the song. Now I know. Now I know. And God said, he said, I love you guys. And then we know, if it hadn't have been Adam, it'd have been me. I often think the only reason why Eve ate that apple was because it was chocolate covered. I mean, why else would you bother? It had to be an apple with a lot of chocolate on it. But it didn't matter. But the thing was, here, what do we do now? What do I go about? Because my love doesn't stop. My love continues. And he said, but I want you to go out and tell everybody about me. Not only do I just want to love you, but my love is so great. It's really meant for everybody. The tiny little babies at that stage, and whatever color, whatever language, whatever food, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Every single person that's born in this world has value and is intimate with God. And they're waiting for some reason that they have this sense of more, the sense that they're missing something so real that it can move their life, it can elevate their being, can bring into them a sense of meaning. I was in Sudan, not a vacation site. And we were there. ILI is really, thank you, church, for supporting. Between Mission Society and ILI, I'm proud to be a part of it. And when we were in my early years just traveling in a lot of countries, we discovered there's a lot of conversions overseas, but not much leadership and discipleship training. So I'd lead you to Jesus, and then now what? Some is a lack of a Bible. Sometimes it's just lack of a model. And well, the society around you is just beating you to death if you become a Christian. and so after some time, I'm with Peter Pereira in India, and he's the Billy Graham of India. Wow. And Peter, I said, there's something, we're missing something. These people, great believers, but they're not sticking with it. The cost is too hard. They don't have the support. They don't have that models. So we began to do a plan. We began to do a little plan and did some leadership things over in India and began to pray. God, this is too important for us just to be a part of it, just this. And God led Wes Griffin to us. Wes was a missionary to Tony, and came home, got bad cancer, and I knew Wes, a good guy, really great guy. And he called my office one day and he said, Al, can I talk to you? Sure, come on over. He said, I've been doing leadership things for the denomination, but he said, I have these these 8 points, these 8 elements that seem real to me about training and equipping and helping pastors, but I don't know how to do it. He said so. I said, well, okay, you don't need to come with us. Get a 501c3. You got money, you got men that'll send you to the moon because they trust you so much. He said, no, I want to be a part of people who have the same heartbeat that I have. And so I said, okay, then you got to drive 2 hours every week back to my office. If you want to be a part of us, and you'll be 2 days in my office, slept overnight in the office, to be who we are. So if you want us to be part of you, then we can help you be the incubator to help you become what you want. So for a whole year and a half, that's what he did. And out of it came the 8 core values that are so profound, fit into any culture. And so that's what we've been presenting over and over and over again. And out of this, we begin to see this is how we're helping to fulfill what it says, go into all the world and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and equipping them to do their life. So when we look at our own history, I began to look at it and I say, how did it work? It wasn't easy for everybody to really agree with what the Bible said about go and make disciples. In fact, the very first disciples were the 12, the 11 that followed Jesus. Of the 11 still left, all of them never finished their life out in Jerusalem. They were the first missionaries. One, obviously John wrote Revelation. Somebody had to hang around and write that stuff, But the rest were gone. Sure, they started in Jerusalem. But then let's go on. Go. And that's how it is. And so when I was in the Sudan and I began to see that I was there because of the training, because of the need, Redwood Christian Park put up $10,000 to pay for a conference. And because of Redwood and me, I said, I'm going to go. Now, the Sudan where we were was a site where Eritrea, just go up a little bit further. In Eritrea, if you can be a Muslim or you can be an Orthodox, but you can't be a biblical Christian. It's illegal. You can be those other two, but you can't be a biblical Christian. So if you're caught with a Bible, which is sneaking in a Bible study, if you were caught, then they immediately said, okay, get rid of Jesus and we'll let you alone. Can't give up on Jesus. Well, if you promise not to meet with other Christians, then that'll be okay too. Got to meet Christians. Well, if you don't read your Bible, we'll let you go out. Got to read my Bible. So what happens is Paulo, it's not his real name because I don't use it. But Paulo said that then they took me and put me out in the kind of the desert area, and I'm in one of those tanks, not tanks, one of the storage cages. And out there, and every day he gets 2 meals a day. He gets a little bit of bread and a cup of tea and a cup of soup. Twice a day, every day. Same food every day. He's in Eritrea, you are a soldier at 16, boy and girl. Girl escapes if she gets babies. Man only escapes if he can't work anymore. For life, you're a soldier. And so at this, after a year, he said, he's really feeling sick. So because you have no term, you have no limits. You'll be the rest of your life. So after a year, he starts feeling sick, and so they send him home because he's going to figure he's going to die. And so while he's there, he recovers, he gets strong enough, and escapes across the border. A little different than our borders. Escapes across. See, the borders are full of mines, and the goal is to kill you if he sees you out there. Not going to bring you back, kill you. And so a lot of Eritreans were able to escape and got into Sudan. Sudan's fully Muslim, but they let them in. And so we went there to teach the 8 core values. And it's so humbling to be with these kind of people. How have I ever suffered? Because I'm a Christian. Occasionally I got some smart alecks that aren't smart enough to grasp the reality of a need for a Savior, but they can't do anything to me. Big deal. And so a lot of times I'd ask believers all over, tell me your story. Tell me your story. Tell me your stories. And all those symbols you say, I'm a nothing compared to these men. And Paulos is about this tall. He finished his school. I think he was an engineer or something, and got arrested, got taken out there. They brought him back, thought he was going to die. And after 2 years, he got better enough to escape across the border into Sudan. And that's where the conference was. 32 people. And so a lot of times we're standing waiting in line just to eat. And I said, well, Paulos, tell me your story. Tell me your story. And he tells me a story. Where he was, what happened, all the things. And I stopped at something I've never said in my life. Why didn't you give up on Jesus? What did he ever do for you? You lost your family. You never can go home. You're going to be a nothing for the rest of the world. You won't have a place to live. You can't be with your family. Why didn't you give up on Jesus? Which some of us have done, but not told anybody, right? He didn't heal my daddy when he had cancer. He didn't bring my kid out all the drugs that he's had. We felt like God like that. I want to leave that God. What did he do for me? Maybe you're sitting in church battling with that. Mad at God because he didn't do what he wanted. I said, Paulos, why didn't you give up on Jesus? And he said, I can't. He's too deep inside of me. He's too deep inside of me. But he said, one day I was hurting so bad. Oh, so bad. So bad. And I said, Jesus, if I could just touch your garment. If I could just touch your garment. And he heard the voice say, you don't have to reach out to me. I'm holding you. I'm holding you. So the gospel went, and this is what we're talking about. He's so much in love with Jesus that take your best shot, devil, and I'm not going to quit. Let the cancer come if I can't cure it. Doesn't matter. I'm in love with you, Jesus. Doesn't matter that I'll never see my family again. It doesn't matter. And that's what's going on across the world. But it didn't start with the Paulos. It started right with the disciples, and they said, go into all the world. And they went. Those 11 went like crazy, went. Tell the story. And at the as they were going, at the beginning again, we say, oh God. And after that came others. Now, the church was pretty strong for about the first 300 years because it was costing them something. There was crisis, there was punishment, there was suffering. But at 300, Constantine was going to go to battle, and he had a dream, and it looked like Kairos, like the letters of Christ. So he hadn't put all the flags up, and they went out and won the war. So therefore, he declared Christianity the official religion. And from there, the church lost its soul. For at least 300 years, at least that much more, there's not much happening. The Catholics got put things together, got their priests running crazy and doing great things, and not some great things, but at least out talking about Jesus, that much. And it took a lot longer time to begin to get the rest of the church. And then about early 17, maybe early 17, there was a man named there was a fellow that was had a lot of property, wealthy, and he kind of was a believer. He was religious and all that kind of stuff. Until one day he was at an art gallery and he saw this sign, and there was a cross on it and tears, and it said, "And what are you doing for me?" There was Jesus on this art. What are you doing for me? And it convicted his soul. Count Zinzendorf was his name. And he had a bunch of property. And during that time, a lot of the people who were trying to believe in the Bible were being persecuted at that time. And so they were able to get into his land, and everything was rich and everything was fine until what they act like? They started fighting with each other. I'm Reformed Baptist, and I'm a Methodist, I'm a this and this, fighting over ridiculous. And they had a time of prayer. They started praying 24 hours. For 100 years they've been praying. And during this period of time, they began to talk about, what about the lost? And the men and women that start signing up, I'll go. They weren't trained. They didn't have equipment. All they knew is they had to go to the lost. The first 2 men went out ready to sell themselves as slaves to go to West Indies. They were a carpenter and a bricklayer. None of them were scholars. They had their basic skills. They were supposed to go and to live alongside of the people they were going to be, so they might hear us. And they planted churches. That was Zinzendorf, and that was the first real mission movement that took place across breadth. Went on for 25 years, 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day. They were praying. When's the last time we all sat in a prayer meeting? I learned something in Brazil. A lot of things I learned in Brazil. I learned Brazilian. God's probably a Brazilian, but I don't pull that. It's just at least a close relative, at least that much. But I had great youth there. I mean, they're great. And they said, Pastor, why don't we have an all-night prayer meeting? I was so excited they wanted to say that. Yeah, sure. Well, I don't know. The first one that goes to sleep, we stop. Got it? The first time we stop praying and you go to sleep, we're closing it down. We started about 7, 8 o'clock at night, had somebody in the church speak a little bit every hour for so many hours. And we had a break. We'd go down and drink what we call chimarrão, kind of hot tea. And we'd eat a little bit. We'd get back to praying. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we're over. The youth already had a trip planned to committed to another church to lead their youth in a big program. They went off on their own. I went out and preached 4 times, got back. God bless us. Prayer. To such an extent that they know that that's the only thing that's going to matter. That's the only thing that's going to help me leap. And so I think of prayer. And so when you look at these early people in the 17th, then somebody began to look at, hear this guy who makes shoes. Began to read about the world and things going on. He's a Christian and not much training, quit at the 4th grade and was fixing shoes. But he read something about the different world, and he made himself a map just like one of these. And he cut on it, he burned on it the world on this piece of leather. And he looked at it and he saw that go into all the world. And he's Christian, he's kind of a pastor, part-time pastor, and he goes to the pastor's club, all these people, and he has 85 pages of all the reasons why we need to go something in the world. And he reads it out, and the leader of the pack stands up and said, "Young man, sit down and shut up. We don't need to hear from you on anything. Just shut up and sit down." And what I learned about missionaries, they don't hear well. They don't hear well. And so what did he do? He saw India. For whatever be the reason, India was his country. And he began to go there as he didn't know what all it was going to take and the cost. How do you go there? Nobody wanted to help him. And they finally went there at that period of time, and he started. And he knew the important goal was how to get the Bible to the people. So here, this guy, 4th grade, really intelligent, began to do translation of the Bible in about 5 different dialects. Spent 12 years doing it. 12 years. He's not even big. He had to work on a farm alarm because they wouldn't let him in close to the major cities. His wife went crazy and died, and other children died on him all this whole time, but he knew they had to get the word out. So he wrote 12 years. He did 5 different dialects. He packed it up in oil kind of pieces to keep it dry, took it down to the warehouse so it could be shipped to England, and there printed out, and a fire came and burned it all down. Now, how many of you are ever ready to quit when something big you had, some dream, some idea, and it collapsed and you just, you didn't do very well? You know what he did? What do you think he did? Start over. Start over. And as he did in all these years, he just worked in such a way that he leveled himself and the people. Today, wrote a book about how wonderful, tremendous man was. 40 years. One key factor he had in his life. His sister was an invalid, and she prayed for him all 40 years. Where there's no prayer, there's no power. Where there's no prayer, there's no power. But soon thereafter, there was another missionary that had a call that felt from young age that he just knew he had to go to China. And so as he went to China, he saw all the missionaries, and they're all gathered on the coast. Oh, it's really wonderful on the coast. But what about all the interior where all the people are really lost? No, you don't want to go in there. It's too dangerous. Don't go there. Well, again, missionaries don't listen well. And so he decided he wanted to be like Chinese. So he got his hair cut funny, and he wore all those clothes and all those different things. And out of it, costly. They had a war. 156 of his missionaries got killed. And we go through all this and we see all these stories, and I read these history stories of these men and women. I say, oh God, that's so far beyond me. The lost. But the whole thing is the lost, the lost, the lost. And in the midst of it all, but there's always a cost. We talked about the cost that's there. There's always a cost. Anybody that was going to Africa packed their stuff in their casket because they knew they'd never come back. They'd never come back. And I was with some Africans in Kenya, and we were at a big meeting, and there was kind of a slack period, and there's feelings. We missionaries weren't perfect, but at least we were there. And they were talking about all the different districts that they don't have any churches in this district, and I'm listening. I say to Samuel, good guy, voice like God. And I said, Sam, and they're all in churches, these 32 pastors, different, but they hadn't gone into these other districts where things weren't too good. And I said, now, after Samuel, you have to tell them they have to go to those districts. You have to tell them. No, he said, Brother Al, you need to tell them. I stood up and I said, 1830s, 1840s, a missionary would get up to go to Africa, pack his goods in his casket because he knew he'd never come home. 2 years out of 22 are left. That's all that's left. I said, these missionaries, imperfect as they are, buried their babies in the soil of Kenya so that you could have the gospel, so you could spread it to your people. And you're not doing it. And you're not doing it. It's time for you to die. 32 men there, 22 come to the altar. We prayed, we cried, we prayed. I went back to my hotel room, a little kind of a hotel room. And I got on my knees and said, oh God, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? I sent them off. Their babies are going to die. What did I do? God said, you didn't do anything. I called them. So there's a cost. And so we got all this and what's happened over the years. Now we moved into a new realm. The church, the church overseas has taken the fruit of the bodies and the life and the gift and the wisdom and the teaching of prior missionaries, but now we've seen over that the movements across the world, for example, it's Africa that's got the biggest number. The biggest movement is Africa. And you look across all these countries and the numbers of nations and now have believers and growing. It's happened because, notice this, the missionaries equipped the future, just like ILI's done. We equipped you to be able to be that leader. We don't always want to be leading. We'll come along, and at this stage, the role of a missionary is different in so many different places. He or she will come, maybe he'll hire onto a company and still do ministry and serve. They'll do different things. Now more and more are starting businesses overseas. But if you do start a business that they approve of, they'll let you in. Now it's not you're not hiding Christian. You are who you are, but you got your business, and more. I've got a whole list, probably 10. I got asked for some examples of at least 10 missionaries in 10 different companies, and the different kinds of companies they work for, or the different kinds of businesses they've set up, or whatever it is they've had. They go with the understanding that I'm going to work, and I'm going to earn my way, and you're going to see, but the influence, the model, the teaching, that's where it continues. That's what's happening today, right around the world. And so the fruit at great cost, is producing itself. And when I look at that sense that it happens, we talk about missionaries in the sense, it seems like missionaries have to travel someplace. Is that true? We kind of think, well, you got to go to here and get on the plane and go get a visa and get all that stuff. Well, that's not really how it works. You know, sitting in this room is about 75 missionaries. Or 100? You're all here. First missionary I met, before I was a Christian, was my brother. Came to Fresno State, played baseball, and met some people who led him to Jesus. And so he came home for Thanksgiving. I was a junior in high school. Came for Thanksgiving. He walked in the house and he said, well, I've just accepted Jesus, my Savior. He's forgiven me of all my sins, and I'm going to heaven. But if you all don't accept Jesus, you're going to go to hell. First missionary I met. This is missionaries. Missionaries go out, declare the kid. Right? He's a missionary. He didn't need a visa to come to my house. And he went in the bedroom, read his Bible all the weekend. Oh, what's wrong? Look what's happened. It's terrible. So then my brother, for summertime, comes home, he's a great guy, and we have jobs, he has jobs, and he leads 3 of my best friends to Jesus during that summer. He goes to the Methodist pastor, doesn't know him, said, I've got these 3 new guys that are Christians, and I'd like somebody to teach them some things. And this very liberal, moderate guy said, I know how to do that. I did that in college. So every Monday night, and I went with him. We were the starting backfield. And I went every Monday night, didn't have my own Bible. And I remember a few things. Psalm 1, I remember this day because of that. And that's nurtured me. So I go away to Davis, and I go to church every Sunday. Didn't hear a single thing in a year that was worth me remembering. But I got every Sunday. Fraternity guys, they're all messed up. Me up Sunday morning, I go to church. So I came back the next summer, and I got a degree in ag business. So I'm working in Visalia at the stockyards for 2 summers. I worked Visalia. And Ron was down here, and he introduced me to Jack Hanna. Have you ever heard of Jack Hanna? Yeah. Sons of San Joaquin. So he met him. And he introduced me to his dad, Lon Hanna. Lon Hanna is a good Okie. You know, I could say those days then now. A good Okie. Simple guy. Their house, Ivanhoe. You know, I went to church once. He said, why don't you come to dinner at my house one time? Sure. So I drove out. And we had dinner, and we sit around and talk, he and I. And Lon just the epitome of just a man. Just a man. So we get talking, and I don't know what I said. I said something, I was dating a Catholic girl or something. He said, it's positive. He said, well, Al, are you a Christian? I said, no, I'm not. He said, do you want to be a Christian? I said, yes, I do. Come here. Quick. Give me your hand. You just invited Jesus into your life. I was in seminary, and one of the guys in the seminary was an engineering major and all the rest. Got to have everything right. And he said, and I told him the story, and he said, he did it wrong. He did it wrong. So he called his wife in Melbourne, and we knelt on this little worn-out rug in this little house out near Ivanhoe. And she prayed, he prayed, and he said, well, do you want to pray? What did I know about prayer? I just said, thanks. But the next thing is one of the most important questions I've ever asked, and we need to ask of each other after you lead somebody to Jesus. What do I do now? It's like having a baby and said, what do I do now? What do I do now? I don't know, but you better do something. What do I do now? And he said, well, you ever been baptized? I said, yeah, at 9. I was baptized at the Lutheran church, whatever church, and never went back. And they said, well, do you belong to a church? I said, nope. Well, he said, the way I figure is you join a church to show whose side you're on. Okay. So that was Thursday night, August 7, 1957. Went to work the next morning, worked on the stockyards, called the pastor of the church in South San Francisco, 5.5 hours away, and I said, Rev, can I join your church? He said, yep. Jumped in my car, drove to South San Francisco, joined the church, got back in my car, went to work. That was my first missionary. See, missionaries aren't determined by geography. Missionaries are the person that carries something from his or her life experience into another's life experience. And out of the abundance of what you have, you issue, you give it, you provide it, you make it available. And that was my brother led all these brothers. So I said, so that was, we're real missionaries. So we need to think of ourselves, Americans, we in this room. We are the missionaries. It's not a visa that you need. It needs a heartbeat to understand that neighbor, that person you work with, that person that's in trouble, that person you don't even know, and maybe some of the 8 million we've got now have in the country, whoever it is, if they don't know Jesus, they need a missionary who knows the culture, who knows the language, who knows what it needs to take, that will take the time and the energy and the effort to pray, to model, to live. My next door neighbor had a son where we just lived, and we moved from up near Placerville, and he was in jail. Got arrested, did drugs and da-da-da. And so he went to jail, and he was in jail. So I said to John, can I write to him? Sure. Well, write to the jail. Couldn't visit because of COVID and all that. But I'd write, he'd write, and I would get all this and talk. He sounded like he was a Christian and all that kind of stuff. And I said, okay. So he comes home. First day out, he comes over from his house to my house. I'm on the back porch, and he comes in, pretty big guy. And I said, well, Jason, what's going on? We talked a little bit, sat down, and I said, well, Jason, have you ever felt like you knew Jesus? Well, yeah. Well, so what did I do? I took out a little folder called 4 Spiritual Laws. Walked him through it. He wanted Jesus. So we started doing Bible studies regularly. And at one time, he wanted to get baptized, but I said, I didn't say you're not ready. I just didn't say you're going to do it. So finally, after 2 years, I said, you're ready. I said, well, my church is going to have baptism. You want to come? I want to be baptized in the river or a lake. Okay. So what lake? Hell. The name of the lake is Hell. Up in the mountains. I mean, we're talking crazy. So I said, okay. So he and his dad and Mom and me, we jumped in the car, drove 2.5 hours through a place I never thought I'd live. We got there, and here's this big lake called Hellhole. Great fishing. And so there's a place where you put your boats in. So we said, you got to go in. You're too big. I cannot lift you out of that water. I want to see what depth you got to have. So he walks in there, and he's a big guy. Found out how deep he had to go for me to get him under. Then he walks out, and I read the whole ritual. The whole thing, like a full baptism, was there 1,000 people. We're going to go through this and this and this. Is this you? Then we walked in the water, and I got him under and lifted him up. And it was a great moment. There was a man and a boy who'd had their boats pulled up there, and they were watching. And they said to the family, what are they doing? Oh, they're baptizing my son. Do you think he could baptize my son? Well, we'll see. So I come in, and the guy said, would you baptize my son, 14-year-old? I said, well, is he Christian? What about you? Are you a Christian? Yeah. Are you serious about God in your church? I am. So I said, so what's your name? Jimmy. Jimmy, you know Jesus? I know Jesus. Are you serious about God? I am. Okay. So I read him the whole thing, took him back out in the water, dunked him under. Come on up. We both got in our boats or cars, drove off. See, what it is I was a missionary. You're a missionary. And what it takes is just that sense that someone, that God said, God, what do you want? I just want to love you guys. I just want to love you. Oh, and by the way, I want everybody to love me, so would you go out and tell somebody that way? See, we're missionaries. Missionaries have that broken heart, that one that said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Now go tell somebody. That's you. That's us. That's what it means to be a Christian. It means he, she is a missionary with a story to tell, with a life to live, and a God who says, thank you. Thank you. Father, I thank you for this church. I thank you for what all Ed and Gretchen mean to us, personally and professionally. I thank you for what it means that this church has supported ministries like ILI and so many others in Kenya and Czechoslovakia and a bunch of other things, because this church is what it means to be a missionary church, because it loves each other, because it cares about each other, but that love goes beyond this wall, beyond our lives. It goes to the extent into the earth. And where there's a brokenness, where there's a need, where there's a sadness, where there's a sorrow, oh God, may one of us as a missionary across the street somehow find our broken heart to be able to fit their broken heart and say, let me tell you about Jesus. Let me tell you about Jesus. May it be so. In his name we pray. Amen.
Aren't you glad I taught him how to preach? In your bulletin, if you would pull out something that says Faith Promise Card. Very quickly, some of you know what this is. Some of you, this is brand new to you. The way that we're serious about missions here, and one of the ways you can tell Americans are serious about something is you look at their checkbook and you see how committed they are financially to something. It's great to be a part of a church where we give more to foreign missions every year than we pay our senior pastor. We're serious about this. So when you put $1 in the offering boxes, I almost said plate. We haven't passed the plate here for a while. When you put $1 in the offering box, 10% of that is going to go to foreign missions. Every one of these flags represents a country where we support missionaries around the world reaching the lost. So you're already doing that if you're tithing to KCC. However, we believe that missions is such a great priority to God that he shouldn't have to depend on just 10% of our 10% in order to fund missions. So because of that, we have a faith promise sort of idea that sometimes the first $1 and the whole dollar goes to God, not just 10%, and that he will provide. So what this is, take this home. We're going to collect it at the end of worship next week. The idea is to ask him to give you a number of for an amount that you don't expect. It's not your regular paycheck. You tithe that. It's not that. It's just saying, God, I want you to increase my faith. That's the faith part of faith promise. And I'm going to believe that if you provide funds for me in the next year that I'm not expecting, I'm going to believe that you're giving that through me to global missions. 100%, not 10%. So it's money that you, let me give you an example. Faith Promise, it just surprises you. I got a refund from my health insurance company last month. Anybody ever get a check back from your health insurance company? Right? So when that comes in, it's like, okay, I know that that's my faith promise. God gave that so he could fund global missions. So what you're going to do is fill this out, and we'll bring it in the end of next week's service. Also, please, I hope you've been inspired this morning. Make sure you're here Wednesday night. Some people have more of a heart for what God is doing in our area. And so come and listen to Cheryl, because we've been partners with Open Gate for, 40 years or something like that. It's a shelter in Dinuba for predominantly women and children. And they do food giveaways and all sorts of other great ministry there. So we're a part of that. And then Stephen and Joy Johnston have spent their entire missionary career in Paris. Talk about a missions field. Churches everywhere, empty, and no Christians. And Stephen uniquely gifted to reach Parisians for Christ. And so come and eat some, bonbons or whatever those things are, those little hors d'oeuvres. Yeah, French food. I wonder if there's going to be pâté. I hope not. Anyway, that's Friday evening, a kind of a reception to hear from them. And then Stephen will be preaching the Faith Promise Sunday, and we'll be receiving that. Also, little missionary mission opportunity for you. Al, with Jane's help, Jane compiled 100 devotions that Al has written over the last 40 years. And it's been published in a book called Your Best. We have a very limited number of copy out there at the table. And Holly, can I ask you to stand by that table out there and collect money? And we're going to sell this book 100%. By the way, this was Wes published this for us, so we didn't have to pay anything for it. So 100% will go to our missions program, and let's say $20. All right, $20 for a book. If you want to give more, you can. 100% will go to missions. We only have about 8 to 10. Don't sell the last 4 or so, because we have to think of the second service people. They'll be mad at me. Anyway. Okay. Thank you again. Come out to Missions Week, and let's really ask God, how are you going to use me as a missionary? How are you going to do that? Is it that person that I sit next to at work? Is it my kids' friends when they come over and mess up my kitchen and eat all my food? How is that going to happen? Or is it, we established, 5 years ago, Dave, a fund to send a missionary to global missions from Kingsburg Community Church. That money's just sitting there because God has not called that person yet. I keep looking around saying, who's it going to be? Maybe one of our young people will be called to global missions, and we will be their sending and supporting church. Man, I'll die happy when that happens, all right? Okay, let's stand, sing the closing hymn, and then we'll have benediction and let you go gobble.